Well, welcome everybody to the October 7th, 2024 Raymore City Council work session. The mayor is out of town, and like the Chiefs, we have several injuries tonight. We are a little short on both sides of the ball, but we do have a quorum, and so we've got a couple of items on the agenda tonight. The first one is some discussion on a developer wanting to do a light tech project. Is that correct, sir?
That would be correct, sir.
And I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you. I'm going to let Mr. Gress kind of give an outline on this, but as an overarching issue, this is going to be a little bit of a departure from what we would normally be doing with the council in this case. We are going to be asking the council to actually allow the mayor or authorize the mayor to issue a letter in opposition of a project, and asking the council at its second legislative meeting in October to actually pass a resolution in opposition to a project, and then allowing staff to be present. As you know, there's a public hearing for MHDC applications, allowing staff to be present in that. And with that, I'm going to kind of turn this over to Mr. Gress. Staff is, because it is an unusual deal and because it is opposition, and normally if we're opposed to something, the council is opposed to something, it is silence on our part. We want to kind of outline why we don't think that that is a good idea in this particular case. While still, I've encouraged Mr. Gress to remain very, very statesmanlike in his comments here. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gress.
Thank you, sir. The City Council earlier this month, I believe, received a notification by mail of a developer's intent to file an application with MHDC with their project here in Raymore. I wanted to provide a little bit of a history with the city's conversations and workings with that developer and specifically, and then some of the issues and things that staff is still trying to work through on a current project they have here in the city. And as Mr. Fearborn mentioned, seeking some feedback and input from the council on how staff is best to handle this project moving forward. So I wanted to pivot back first to 2020, which was the initial application that staff worked on with this developer, coincidentally on the same piece of property that you all have in front of you this evening. The staff was approached in 2020 seeking general information about this property, including the zoning of the site, whether or not it would fit the type of development that that applicant was trying to pursue at the time. And then the second request was the steps that they needed to take in order to appear before the City Council to present their project and ultimately seek a resolution of support for them to continue with their application to MHDC. So with that project specifically in 2020, the applicant did appear before the council on September 28th of that year, gave the presentation, and the council actually voted unanimously to provide the support for that project. The mayor also penned a letter of support that went together with that, and that was included in their application to MHDC. That year, and as I mentioned, it was this specific property that's in front of you, despite having the support and the letter from the mayor, did not receive the funding from MHDC that year, and so the project stopped at that location for that year. Fast forward to 2021, we were approached again by the same applicant looking at a different piece of property, coincidentally, which is a project that is still under construction in the city. They went through the very same process with that. They approached staff about the zoning and what would needed to be done in order to properly zone that site. They also, again, asked for the steps to get in front of the council again to make the presentation on their new project at the new location. At their meeting in October of 2021, they made their request in the form of resolution. That request actually died in front of the council due to lack of a motion, and so the city did not provide our support for that project there in Raymore for that year. And despite not having the support that year, they did get the funding through MHDC and then were able to proceed on with getting the zoning in place and everything they needed to start constructing that project. It's still a project that's under construction here within the city of Raymore. Fast forward to 2024, staff was contacted earlier this year Again, asking very similar questions about the project that you have in front of you this evening, ensuring that the zoning was still in place, and again, what steps needed to be taken in order to appear again in front of the council. Staff did provide the zoning request, but due to some of the issues and things that we were working on at the time with their current project, staff essentially advised that they'd be better off to address those outstanding items before. There's some other concerns that we wanted to address with them before we brought them in front of the city council for their presentation. Staff did not ever hear back from that developer after providing that initial information, and then the last communication that the city received would have been the letter that you all received in the mail, indicating their intent to proceed forward with that application. So I did confirm here 2 weeks ago, they did file their application with MHDC, have been kind of going through the schedule with the commission on what their review is for all of their projects. It's the only project in Cass County that I could find would be in Raymore. All of their other applications seem to be scattered throughout the state. But wanted to kind of just alert the council of a few things that we've talked about internally as we've reviewed this application and as we're still trying to wrap up their current project here in the city. As I mentioned before, one of the things that we've found in how MHDC reviews these applications, it was kind of backwards in how we gave our support and did not give our support with the last two applications. The year that we gave it, they did not receive the funding. In the year that we did give it, the year that we did not give it, they received the funding from MHDC. In kind of our review of their applications with MHDC and how they score their applications, it would appear that the support of a city is kind of I'll put it as a nice to have. It's not a requirement that they obtain it. And so we feel that due to their lack of, pushing the issue of trying to appear in front of the council again for this new application, they're kind of recognizing that it's not a requirement of the application. As Mr. Fearborn mentioned, we have never, the council has typically never opposed a project in the way that he outlined. They typically just let the application die in front of them. And so kind of how things are moving forward with that, they're kind of recognizing that they don't really need that support in order to continue with it. Kind of explains why we're here in front of you this evening. I did want to go kind of through some of my initial thoughts on their application and why it begs the question of maybe something different on this property, or at least a different approach to development. In general, the proposed project does not typically provide any new type of housing that we would wish to see in the city. It's kind of a cut and paste of an existing project just at a different site. Not that it's a bad type of project in itself, but we typically like to see a different approach to different projects throughout the city and not the cut and paste approach that we kind of see in there, at least in their initial application to the state. And as I mentioned before, with the project that's currently under construction, currently not complete and hasn't been finalized out by the city. We've done a couple inspections there over the last month or so as they get closer, hopefully, to finishing it. But there are still several outstanding items related to infrastructure, landscaping, kind of the finishing touches, if you will, that should be done at this point in the project, and they simply are not. So kind of hoping that they have the ability to make a little more progress and finish that project before we take on another one with them here in the city. In general, I was kind of mentioning to Mr. Fearborn, the communications in general, usually in our conversations with a developer when we talk about how they're intending to move forward, whether or not staff can support it or whether or not we think the Planning and Zoning Commission or City Council can support it. As we said before, our initial answer is usually a no. And if usually it comes with a no, but here's what you can do to get our support on the project, or here's what we think the council might want to see if they are inclined to support the project. The shocking and kind of disappointing thing this year was after our initial, there might be some concerns that we want you to work through. Instead of trying to figure out what those were, they just kind of scooted around that process a little bit and proceeded forward with that application, which was a disappointment on our part because we never really got a chance to share what those concerns were about how they might be able to improve their application in the city. And that in of itself appeared to be kind of a workaround of what our typical process is and what the city council is used to when they see these types of requests. The challenging part and kind of the reason we're here this evening is that one of the reasons they've chose this property is it is currently zoned for the type of development they're looking for. For those of you who may have been on the council at the time, the initial project on this site was the Raymore Senior Village. It was 196 apartment units that was age restricted to 55 and up. There was no income restriction component as part of that project, and obviously that project was never built. So the property got zoned for this type of development in the early 2000s and has never been developed on today. So that kind of comes to an advantage in the process because the property is zoned. There's not a lot that they really need from the city in order to proceed with the project, either with or without the tax credits that they're seeking, meaning that the only item that's needed is the approval of the site plan by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Those, as you all know, the commission has final approval of all site plan applications. And the reason I mention that is because that means that there's no other opportunity for this item to come back before the council for any input or direction on your all's part. Typically, as I mentioned, that comes on the front end when they appear before you to get your feedback and ask for your support. So because of how this process has kind of transpired and where they're at in the process, talking with Mr. Fearborn and some of our staff and our team, felt pertinent to kind of come before you this evening and see how you all would wish staff handle this project moving forward. So that will conclude my staff report, and I'm happy to answer anything else.
Does the council have any questions for Mr. Gress at this point before I kind of try to put a bow on this?
I had heard rumors from some people that some of the building materials might not meet typical standards down at that site, and that the people they spoke with across the street that were initially talked to in support of the project had kind of changed their mind after seeing the quality and pace of the work and communications. Is that true as far as you know?
So I'll answer your first part, and then Mr. Fearborn might have a little more history on that. I do know in general there are buildings down there passed all the inspections of the city that they needed to pass. Generally, that looks at code requirements and safety things, not always the quality of the materials. But with respect to any building code requirements, there was never any issues down there about them not meeting those.
Thank you.
They are not in violation of any building codes. They are, I will go to, when the project was approved for MHDC funding, I went to Mr. Carteret at the time and I said, I'm not understanding how this happened because, and one of the things you may remember is one of the requirements is you got to be close to services. That's kind of out there. And so I had just asked Mr. Carteret to do some investigation, and it is kind of telling. There were 4 reasons MHDC gave publicly for approving this project. Number 2 of the 4 is low per unit construction cost and total development cost per unit. So while they are meeting the bare minimum of what code has in there, they're meeting the bare minimum of what code has in there that they have to do. If you've driven through the project, as Mr. Gress indicated, a number of our both suggestions and requirements for them to continue have gone unheeded over time. And yes, you are correct, sir. Staff has heard from a number of you may remember that they went across the street to get endorsements to the council from some of our current citizens who then wrote the council saying, I might be interested in actually moving across there if I choose to leave the home that I am in. That was based on a meeting that they had, which was not a staff endorsed meeting with all the residents around there. We're actually hearing from a number of those residents now who are contributing to the complaints about what's going on in the project, the amount of trash, the amount of cleanup, erosion control issues have been associated with this project. Mr. Gress kind of takes that to a slightly higher level until we would encourage the council until we see a successful conclusion down here to not consider this. The reason we're asking for the extra step over and above silence and actually being in opposition to it, they have ignored the council. A little bit of concern that I have is in their presentation down to MHDC, there may be the flavoring of when we originally proposed this exact project, we had a council endorsement. Well, we just didn't go to them for the endorsement this time, but we did have it last time. I feel there needs to be a proactive approach to let's go in and tell them no at this point based on now we have experience, which is why staff is before you tonight asking for those 3 items to come forward. Again, tonight, all we're looking for is kind of the nods that you would be okay with us proceeding in this manner with these three items. Number one, letter from the mayor. Number two, resolution from the council. Number three, staff being able to appear in opposition to the project at the public hearing. That concludes staff report tonight.
Sorry, Mr. Mills has a question.
And maybe I misunderstood. I thought when we talked about the other location and you gave me some history on that, I thought that as a city, we had opposed their application at the state. We approved their facility, but we opposed the.
That is correct, sir.
Okay, so what are we doing different? What's going to make a difference on opposing this application versus what we did last time? Just help me on.
Sure. And good question. The last time, the council did not endorse the project. This time, they're not even asking for council endorsement. They're going around that and just going directly to MHDC. But the council didn't endorse, but the council did not proactively go down there and say, we don't want the project, we just didn't endorse it.
I thought we had sent a letter.
No. Mm-mm. We did not send a letter endorsing the project, but we stopped there.
Ms. Abdelgawad?
Thank you. Do we know if this has happened before? Have other cities done that? Has it made a difference?
I don't think we did any research into that, did we?
The only thing that I could find in a couple of the applications is that not having, sorry to put that, not having a letter of support, not meaning that you have a letter of opposition, but just not having a letter from the city that you're working in, it proved to be, in some of the applications, just a nice to have. It wasn't a requirement that in order to get the funding, you have to have the endorsement of the city. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we didn't do a ton of research into every application. We tried to look kind of just locally in Cass County. This year, it looks like we're the only application in Cass County for this round of projects.
I remember him standing in front of us saying, I don't really need this from you at one point in one of the processes. He said, I don't really have to have this from you, but I would like it. It would look good in our
Exactly.
application. But that didn't really answer my question, except that we just don't know if anyone's done this before and if it worked.
I have to believe in all of the history of MHDC, because they do have a public hearing, that there have possibly been municipalities who've come out against it. We just don't know.
Mr. Barber?
Thank you. Obviously, this group, this developer, they've got other sites around the city. What's their track record? I mean, obviously, it's new to us now, but I guess lesson learned. But what, did you find out anything from any of their other sites?
They have a number of sites throughout Missouri. Having reviewed those sites, I would anticipate that they have had some of these charges leveled against them at those sites as well.
And if I could add to that, one thing I mentioned about this project is it is kind of a cut and paste of the same project just elsewhere. That is one thing that was evident in our research initially, is that they build a very similar type of unit, albeit maybe a different layout or mix of those units in every city that we looked at. So it's a very standard type of project that they do, just a little bit different based on the city that they're working in.
Mr. Baker?
Just maybe a general question. I know that the project we were talking about, because my mother-in-law was actually looking at those, is it standard for 55 and over? I could support 65 and older, because once you get to that age, you're at fixed income, but the 55, and that may be something that's out of bounds for a city to even get involved in, but it seems like that, you know, when you get to 65, you retire, you're on fixed income, something like that may be a better project, but when at the 55, you know, I mean, I could live there, but not under income, you know, requirements, but is that something that's normal with those communities, or?
55 is absolutely the norm, sir. And I share I could live there too.
Yeah, I've been trying to get that changed myself.
Yeah, please. And the The reason staff is being very cautious in what they're saying and simply asking for the recommendation and limiting our conversation is, should, even with our opposition to your question, has it happened before? Should, even with our opposition, they somehow receive MHDC funding, we would not anticipate being the last conversation we have with the council about this project. And the next conversation would more than likely be an executive session, which is why we're being very cautious about our comments tonight. No, that would be an action on the part. If we don't hear the council saying anything in opposition, you will be seeing at the second legislative meeting of October, you will be seeing resolution from the council, a letter for you all to review that would be from the mayor to them, and staff would anticipate, with the approval of both of those, the council is giving the okay for us to be present at the public hearing.
Ms. Abdullah.
One more quick question. So we know the city of Raymore has quite a forceful community. Do we need to rally the troops?
It certainly wouldn't hurt to, especially these folks who originally endorsed it, it would be interesting to see if perhaps the two who have talked to me would most certainly love to be present at the public hearing. I can say that much, and they know about it, and they're talking. We have a 4-day window of when it might occur. I assume as we get closer, we'll know.
So the way they scheduled them this year, it's the first time I think they've done it. They're all virtual, so you can't actually drive to the meeting and voice your comments there. We've signed up for the first day. It's the 29th, 30th, 1st and 2nd, I think, 4 days consecutively here at the end of this month. I can follow back up with those dates and times and the link that you need to register to if you all have any constituents that you would like to share that with. It's not so much a when the application comes up, I believe they simply just call on the next person in line. I can share the application number of the application here in Raymore so you can make sure to speak about which application that we have here. So I can follow up with Mr. Fearborn and he can get all that information back to the council here pretty shortly.
And just one final comment to the council. The other reason we are asking for this extraordinary measure is we have said to the council many, many times, you all see about 1 in 10, and the other 9 are smart enough that when we say we're not going to recommend this to the council, they go away. This is the 1 in 99 of that 9 that go, we don't care about the council, and we don't care about staff's recommendation. Just another reason why we're asking for this step.
And this is literally our only way as a council to actually have any input on this, because it's already done.
At this point in time, sir, that's correct.
Staff is just looking for consensus. I'm in favor of honoring staff's request to bring this in front of
Yeah.
us.
If I don't hear anything, you can count on it's gonna, perfect.
I think you have it, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Looks like our second item is our discussion on the fiscal year 24-25 budget and CIP.
Thank you, sir. Any other input on the budget before first reading next week? Because staff would have a recommendation for the council. Thank you. As you can see up on the screen last week, you received my comfort level number. And that 515,756 was set into there for one-time projects that would still keep us above my comfort level. It was suggested that that amount be called out so we could put it into transportation. We would ask just for the council's indulgence that I would actually like to move that up into street preservation, which is the broad category. We will be coming back to the council with, we've already come with some ideas for future plans, but we'd really like to commit that to this at that point a little bit more proactively, even though it would require a final vote. But I would like to add that amount to the 608,000 that you see up there. And I see one thumbs up, see a whole bunch of nods. It is moved, and we thank the council.
Mr. Mills says it.
The,
Mr. Mills says
under
it.
street preservation, that also includes 58 Highway, right? Or is that just residential streets?
That is, again, the final plan for what this now,
But I mean, it includes any street in our
exactly,
city
right,
limits, is
right.
what I'm
The-
trying to
the-
get at.
what we will
It's
for-
not just neighborhood streets.
right,
any
we will
street. Okay.
formalize a plan, a recommended plan to the council. And of course, we brought up some other ideas to the council last week. We're going to wrap all of that. This is just to get it into the budget.
Right, I just want to make sure it was open to be used,
Right,
any street within the city limits.
right. This is
Okay.
not a dedicated street amount to something.
This could even,
It will get us very, very close to 3 million plus 800,000. We're going to be close to 4 million in street repairs being budgeted by this council in '25, which is pretty necessary and pretty exciting.
it just,
Still nothing romantic.
to, when you take care of your roads, I think it goes a long way. Just for Councilmember Mills' question, street preservation could encompass literally anything, emergency repairs. If we wanted to pave a small section of a street for some reason, I mean, it's pretty overall encompassing, correct?
Right, and there's just so much for the council now to consider as far as what you all want to do and the amounts that are on here. Staff is working very diligently to give you not just one recommendation, but options, a good smorgasbord of options on how we're going to approach this.
Any other questions on budget? Anything under other this evening, sir?
No, sir, that would be it.
Well, does anybody else have anything under other? I think we stand adjourned. Thank you.